Hello, welcome to the next part of the self-defense kinda custom fight tutorial video. And today we're going to be, drumroll, editor me put in a drumroll so that I'm not embarrassing myself. We're going to be learning about fighting and all this other stuff, but mainly this. Basically just apply what you learn here and apply it for the rest. Basically we're going to be learning about this stuff. This is what I consider code execution. Essentially, we do things in the game, and I actually did do this already, mainly because I didn't want to embarrass myself when I realized I made a mistake. And it's not like that happened while I was recording, and then I had to scrap the recording to not embarrass myself. Editor me, don't put in clips from that. Don't do that. Don't. Anyway, we also made the enemy do something, or at least I think we did. Let me make sure. Tag table of contents. Yeah, we made the enemy do something as well. That way, you can actually technically get to the end of this boss. Although it's, again, not much of a boss, but you can technically get to the end of it. As you can see, before it immediately crashed because we didn't have code ready for when it fought. But now we do. So it did not crash this time. And of course, now that the enemy here, her name is Diana Devanged. It's a little play on because it sounds like deranged. Anyway, the point is, now that she actually has code for, her attacking, she has an attack app now. Now it doesn't crash. Of course, if we do literally anything else, it will crash because all I did was add in fight. But we're gonna do something. We're basically gonna, let's just say for bandages, right? We're gonna redo what we did here with fighting and do it to bandages to demonstrate how it works. And it will be shown that when I use bandages, it will work. Although I might actually have to get out of the fight for it to do that because it might need to load the changes. Anyway, so what we do is we have to fill out all of these. Well, actually, we need to go back. We need to take a few steps back, actually. Because we need to go to fight details and fight text, and we need to add text for it. So we'll just add something. You applied bandages. I had caps lock on. That's amazing. You applied the bandages. Health and stuff. I don't know. Just something to demonstrate what happened. We're going to save that. So now this is considered, if you've noticed, this is considered the third line, but now this text that we made here is considered ID2. So anytime we want to display this string of text, we have to put in 2. The reason why is because this is considered ID0, this is considered ID1, and this is considered ID2. It is indeed 0 indexed. That's not very natural, and I could have made something to fix that. Anyway, basically how it works is it's considering how many line endings, how many times you have to basically press down on the down on the arrow keys here to get to your text, and in this case we have to do it twice. For this reason, I included a comment text file so you can actually label them here so that's not in the way here. It makes it a lot easier. Basically, you'll get used to it, but it is sometimes annoying if you have a bunch of strings of text, like if you've noticed in the tedious teacher fight, it's a little annoying, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to get used to. Anyway, we'll go back to bandages. And the thing we need to change in order to reflect that is here, string to display to... That's freaky. Did I predict this? What did bro mean by this? Well, whatever we did, apparently it's already there. So, awesome me. I'm actually creeped out by that. What the hell? I'll put up an explanation if I figure out what I did. Anyway... So we'll just say we heal 6 HP. we'll say no command power change. And you have to fill these out. Just because it's 0 doesn't mean you don't have to fill it out. Sound effect you actually don't have to fill out. But for the sake of consistency, we'll just put 0. And putting in 0 is the same thing as leaving it blank. Or at least it should be. 0 HP change, enemy HP change. So we're just going to put 0. Deactivate object. In this case, you put no change. The reason why we put no change instead of 0 here is because 0 can be an object ID. So we're going to have to put no change. Activate object, we do the same thing, no change. And these gimmick var changes, basically you can use these whenever you want to change a variable in your variable library. We obviously don't have variables yet. We don't have variables yet, so we're going to have to go over this later. But for now, if you don't want any changes, you just put no change again. In fact, let's just copy that. Save. Close, actually, without missing the freaking X button like a freaking Neanderthal. Anyway, no change, and there we go. And because we put no change here, we don't have to worry about these two. It reads this one first, and if there's no change, it doesn't bother reading these because why would it read that? This has to do with changing a variable, but you already declared you don't want to change a variable, so it doesn't bother reading them. Meaning, as long as this says no change, you don't have to bother filling this out. If this does say change a variable, in which case you have to put in the variable ID, you can fill out one of these. If you put this to 0, you have to fill this out. But otherwise, if you do this, it will ignore this because you can't do both at the same time. It will prioritize doing this. But if this is 0, it will do whatever's in here. And of course, if you want to do neither of them, put no change here, like I said. So, yeah. That should actually be that. Go figure, it's that simple. But just in case, let me make sure that I had the right case. Yeah, no change. Wait, let me make sure. Okay, yep, no change. And I'm going to put don't save, because I don't want to change that. And yeah, now if we use bandages, it should do something instead of nothing. Yep, there we go. You applied the bandages, health and stuff. My name is Dan Advantage, welcome to my D&D session. I hope you have fun or whatever. That's just a filler line. We're going to obviously change that later. Although probably not on camera since this is just teaching you. This isn't meant to show you everything within the fight. So that's actually that. There's a couple more things to go over with the boss attacks. This is actually going to be probably a shorter episode because, well, it wasn't a very complicated thing to begin with. I guess I could go over the functions. Recognized. And it is in the documentation if you want to double check some of the recognized functions. But basically in this case, a function is basically when we enter in, well, it says in the documentation, a specialized keyword that basically tells the game that you want to do more than pass along a number. Essentially, you're saying, instead of this, I mean this. And we can actually showcase that. Let me go back. Instead of doing what I said I was going to do, I'm going to backtrack and immediately do something else instead. Wait a minute. Oh, it's an enemy HP change. There we go. We actually had we had a couple of functions here, actually. But for now, we'll just go over the simple one, which is damage. Basically, when we put in a word like this, which, again, they're all here in case you need a refresher on what they all do. But when it comes to words like this, these first couple ones, all you have to do is just put in the word, and it'll put in insert whatever stat you had here. For example, when we put in damage, it returns the current damage stat. And by returns, I basically mean it's as if you just put in the damage number here. That's what returns means. It just gives the game the number, the damage number. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, in the case of you doing... Okay, I have to go to fight details in order to do it. In the case of this, where you use current progress, you obviously don't know what their damage stat is. And in the case of HP and command power, you don't know what current HP the player has, or what current command power that player has at the moment they use it. Even though you might know what these are, you might not know it in this case if you use current progress. In those cases, you can get a more dynamic number than just having a fixed, say, 3. It can be more than just 3 if you put in a function like this. And it could be even more if you combine it with mod, which mod is basically just combining a bunch of these other variables. As you can see here, we're using mod to add 3 to damage. So whatever our damage stat is plus 3. So if we fight, as you can see, we did 12 damage, which means we had 9 damage before that. So if I get rid of this and just put damage, hopefully this will work. I think it should work. Yeah, as you can see, we only did 9 damage that time because we didn't have we didn't have this. If we do it again, oh, I didn't save it. That's stupid. If we do it again, yeah, there we go. It did 12 damage that time because we added 3 to whatever our current damage was. And this is what I mean by functions allow you to have more dynamic numbers. Hell, you don't even need to use damage at all. You can use random range. 0, 40. I don't know. Fuck it. Throw balance out the window, right? As you can see, 32 damage, that is indeed a random number between 0 and 40. We can even do... We'll just cut that out. But future editor me, please don't embarrass me. Anyway, yeah. As you can see in the random range case, I had to have 2 other lines in order to properly use the function. In these cases, you'll have to have... These are called the specifiers, where basically, because it's random range, we need to specify what we want our random range to be, so this will be the minimum and this will be the maximum. It's kind of similar to the functions we showed in the previous episode, like where it was bounds and gradual bounds, where we had to specify what we wanted to do with those functions. It's the same case here. And it's the same case when we use the mod damage plus 3. In this case, 3 is the specifier, and all of these were keywords. Obviously, mod allowing us to combine the other 2 functions with a math operator. In this case, the math operators were obviously plus, minus, multiply by, divided by, to the power of. Make sure it's the same case, otherwise it might crash. But you can also combine it with other ones. For example, damage, random range, and then you would put 0 or like 3. So now it'll produce a random number from 9 to about 12. Yeah, 11. As you can see, the next time we use it, it'll also be 11 because random. Isn't that funny? But yeah, you can use those functions to make your fight a little bit more dynamic, especially if you use variables, since variables are a lot easier to change and can be applied consistently throughout various aspects of the game. All right, 11. Okay, there we go. Random chance finally got me something else that wasn't a 2. But, okay. If you use it right, the variables, right. Basically, you can even make it a lot more personalized or a lot more variable. Because it's called variable.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I am such a comedian. Like, holy shit. Oh, man, just get off the fucking video. Variable, right. You can make your fight a lot more variable throughout it all and make it a lot more complex with this. For example, if you wanted to have a mechanic, or say like variable 4. Let's just say you can have a mechanic where the player can power themselves up, and you can use this to do so. Let's just say variable 4 was a variable called player power or something. You can actually use that to implement. You can actually use this variable, since you can change it throughout various parts of the game, as you can see here with gimmick var changes. Since you can change it in various aspects of the game, you can make it so that the player can power themselves up whenever they attack. Or you can just make it completely random because screw consistency. Or you can make it extremely consistent like this. Or you can make it even more stupidly consistent by just putting in a constant number. You can do any of this. The game will recognize all of it just fine. And those functions like the ones I just showed, work everywhere. Mostly everywhere. I'll get into where it doesn't, but for the most part, it works in places like this. In cases like, say, the boss sprite here, it doesn't work. You would use constant mod, or just, the functions I showed before, like whatever. No. But you would use mods like this, because this is more appropriate for what would be going here. In the documentation, it tells you explicitly, when it goes over these files, it tells you which functions are compatible in which thing. So if you're curious what function is compatible in what, it'll tell you. Like, for example, if I do here. Where is it? Fucking hell, where is it? Okay, anyway, yeah. Here, it'll look like this. You can use the following functions: variable, bounds, gradual bounds. Do not use constant mod here. Just start with the functions, keywords, or a number. And in this case, it was telling me with the boss sprite, which, speak of the devil, that's right where we are. So yeah, it'll usually look something like this. It'll tell you what functions you can use where. But for the most part, when it comes to code execution like this, or what I like to call code execution, you can use any of the functions that I just specified. Mainly, when I get back up to it, yeah, there's a lot of documenting I had to do. You can use variables or functions 1 through 9. Technically 1 through 14 if you combine it with mod. But you can use all that here. Even in string to display, which you might be wondering what would be the point of that. Well, in the Miss Helen fight, I actually used that to have a little mechanic with spawn, where if you use spawn too many times to get stars, you would get punished on the third use of it. You can use a variable to track how many times the player has used spawn and punish them on the last attempt. Then you can let them know that they've been punished by using a function. Combined with mod to input a different IV. So yeah, it would be helpful to use it anywhere. You can use it here, here. Like I said, anywhere. Well, not anywhere in this case, because there's some of them called change sprite based on player action. You can use it on next attack. Now that one's fine. I believe you can use it. You can also use it in sound effect as well. But in this case, it's just asking for true or false, so don't use that for that. Which, by the way, that brings me to the enemy attacks and what differentiates them from the player actions. Well, not much changes them, except for 3 key things. Based on player action, change sprite, and next attack. Yeah, that's what changes them. Based on player action, basically what that means is you can have different code executions based on what the player does. For example, if I were to port Redundancy Man into a custom fight, the third turn would have a based on player action, since that's his main mechanic. In the case that you want the enemy to react to a certain thing the player did, there's actually an easier way to do it than this. But a less complex way to do it, and basically the point is there's a simpler way to do it. But if you want to do it for a whole turn, this would actually be easier than reacting to a certain thing. Like only if I want to react to fight, this would be a little bit unnecessary, especially since it's either you take it or leave it. There's no I only want him to react to fight and nothing else and act normally for the rest. You have to put in something for everything else. Granted, you can put in the same something for everything else. It's just, again, extremely unnecessary considering there's a simpler way to do it. But we'll have to get into that when we get into variables and the change enemy action function, or text file located within variables. But basically, you can have the boss react to what the player does, similar to what Redundancy Man does on his third turn. So that's pretty cool. You can also make it so that the enemy changes their sprite on a certain turn. For example, if I wanted nothing to appear here, and then when she introduces herself, then she introduces this guy, you can use the change boss sprite function to make it so that she changes the sprite here. Or like if you want to add an animation for attacking, you can do that too. In fact, that's explicitly why I have the change back here. Basically, if I fight here, it'll do this, then say he was playing an animation here. While he would have the animation and it would keep looping until I kept saying, until I pressed OK, in which case he would resort back to his normal sprite. He would resort back to his normal sprite. In which, or if it's false, he will keep the current animation sprite. For example, like, I guess in an instance where you wouldn't want to have him, change back is if, like, he was swinging, or, like, he was holding up a shield or something to signify he was blocking. You can do that. Or, like, have a different thing, like, if he was checking you out, he would have like a magnifying glass, and on your turn the magnifying glass would remind you that he's checking you out, so it would have to do with a certain mechanic or something like that. Basically, there's a reason why you'd want to change back, and there's a reason why you wouldn't want to change back. Typically, change back is used for if you want to play a certain animation and then go back to the idle. And then not using change back would be like if you want to remind the player that a certain thing's going to happen, or that the enemy did something, or what they did last. The point is, use this one situationally. And obviously, you already know what these two are. Everything else just gets carried over from the other sprite, like X Origin and stuff, so you don't have to worry about that. It's actually pretty simple. Just do that. And for the most part, the rest of this should be pretty normal. Obviously, we haven't gone really into what activate and deactivating objects does, or what the gimmick var changes are, or what any of these do. But for the most part, again, we don't really need to go into that, because we don't have any of those to begin with. So, well, I guess technically we have an object here, but we don't want to deactivate her out of nowhere. That would look really weird. For now, this is actually all we need to go over, because we're going to go when we go over the variable library and the object library, then we can get into activating and deactivating objects and gimmick var changes, and maybe even get into more complex things like specific tools or strategies I coined to hopefully take more advantage of the system I made. But for now, that's all we need to do. In fact, what we learned in doing this, the string to display, player HP change, command power change, all these should be pretty self-explanatory. But what we learned in doing this, we can actually apply and make it easier to make objects in the future. For example, if we go to if clicked on here, we learn it's basically the same thing, just with one small addition, the Z action list, which I hope I don't have to tell you, we'll go over that later. But for the most part, it's all the same. Do you look at that? That means that the knowledge we learned from before, we can just throw in here again. And as you can see, yeah, it's structured the same way. So if you know it for one, you'll probably know it for another one. Except, again, the the addition of the Z action list, which again we'll go over later when we go over objects. And wow, Matt, that's cool and all, but I bet it's not going to be the same thing for the variable library. You watch your mouth, bucko, boom. It's the same exact thing, except we add 3 things. The Z action list again, the variable to compare to, which makes sense because it says if equal to A, so this is the variable we're comparing it to. Pretty self-explanatory. And change enemy decision, which should be pretty self-explanatory, but again, we'll go over that. The point I'm trying to make here is that because we learned how code execution in players, in the player actions, and technically in the enemy actions too, we can apply the logic elsewhere as well. So we don't have to worry too much about learning a lot of new things in future episodes. We can mainly worry about how to actually use them, like how to use them to make it look like a coherent fight, because I'm sure right now this just looks like a bunch of random tools that don't really look like it'll work together very well. But trust me, it will work together well. I don't know why I have to say trust me. I already made a fight in the custom fight system, so I did already prove its worth. How long have we been going for? I said this was going to be short, damn it. Well, I guess it was shorter than the last episode, and most of it is just me re-explaining things. But as you can see, with the custom fight system, it does go together very well. Hello, dear student, you might be utterly helpless. As you can see, spawn out beating star, you put it on the board without her noticing. Sneaky, you wonder how many times you can get away with it. I'm just going to use 3 times so I can demonstrate what I said before. So this is my 3rd time. On my 4th time, yep, I got a bunch of stars removed. And that was because I used the function for it, for a string to display. So that demonstrates that you can indeed make this system all work together to look like an actual fight that was made in the game. In fact, I'm sure if this custom emblem weren't here, and I didn't already tell you that this was a custom fight, you probably would have thought this was in the base game already, but no. This is being read from a bunch of text from a bunch of files outside the game. Technically speaking, you could have made this fight. And hopefully the same thing will apply when we get further into Dungeons and Doofuses. So is that you'll start to learn, that you'll start to piece together things on your own, and then start to get the picture of how things will work in this system. But again, we're going to take baby steps. Because obviously, I made the custom fight system. I would know how to do something like this. Whoops. So, in the next episode, we'll go to the object library, since I feel like that would be more important, ? Plus, we already did kind of do some groundwork with doing this. So, we're going to work on adding another object, and we're going to get it to do things. You know, take advantage of some of this if whatever's in here. And maybe do some other dynamic things, like maybe make it face the player, or maybe make it shoot something. I don't know. We'll see what we do next time. See you then, or whatever. I don't freaking know. It's not like I'm scripting these or whatever.